At my son's birthday party, his wife leaned close to me and whispered, "Please don't tell anyone you're his mother. It's embarrassing." My heart broke in that moment, but I nodded silently. I thought I had been erased from his life until he stood up to give his speech, and his very first words shocked her and the entire room. If this story already has you hooked, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more powerful life stories and comment below where you're watching from. I'd love to know. My name is Evelyn Parker. I am 66 years old, a widow, and a mother who built her whole life around her son, Michael. I raised him alone after my husband passed away when Michael was still a boy. Life was never easy, but I worked long hours and sacrificed whatever I could so he would never feel the emptiness I carried in my own heart. Every time I saw him succeed, whether it was walking across the stage at graduation or building a career I could never have dreamed of for myself, I felt proud beyond words. When Michael married Sophia, I hoped my family would grow larger, that I would gain a daughter and maybe one day more grandchildren to fill my home with laughter again. But instead, I often felt like I was being quietly pushed aside. Sophia is smart, ambitious, and always focused on appearances. She likes to surround herself with people who match her lifestyle, polished and perfect. I never felt I fit into that world, but I always tried. I told myself that if I stayed patient and kind, she would one day see that I only wanted to belong. Michael's birthday was meant to be a celebration, a day where family and friends came together to honor him. The party was held at a grand hall filled with his colleagues and business partners. Everyone was dressed sharp, the tables decorated with shining centerpieces and tall glasses of champagne. I arrived in my best dress, carrying a gift I had chosen with care, a framed photo of Michael and his late father, a reminder of where he came from and the love that built his life. As I walked into the room, I felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. This was his world now, far bigger than the small one I had raised him in. I wanted so badly to feel welcome, to see him smile at me and know I still mattered. But deep inside, I feared I would be overlooked. I feared that in this glittering room full of people, I would be invisible. The moment I stepped into the hall, I felt the difference between myself and everyone else. The women wore sparkling dresses, their hair styled perfectly, and the men looked sharp in their suits. Laughter floated through the air as glasses clinked and conversations buzzed. I held my small wrapped gift tightly in my hands, suddenly feeling that it did not belong among the expensive boxes stacked on the gift table. I reminded myself that love mattered more than money. Michael would understand. He always had. I moved toward the table to place my gift down when Sophia appeared beside me. She looked stunning in a sleek red dress, her hair pinned neatly back. She smiled at the guests nearby, but when her eyes met mine, her smile faded. She stepped closer, so only I could hear her. With a voice low enough that no one else noticed, she whispered, "Please don't tell anyone you're Michael's mother tonight. It's embarrassing." My heart dropped. The words cut through me so sharply that I could barely breathe. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. "What do you mean?" I asked softly. She leaned even closer, her tone sharper now. "These are important people. They don't need to know about you. Just sit quietly, enjoy the party, and let Michael shine. Please don't mention you're his mother." I felt my face grow hot, my throat tightening as I forced myself to nod. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to ruin Michael's day. But inside, I felt as though the floor had opened beneath me. Embarrassing? After everything I had done for him, after every sacrifice, after all the years of being both mother and father to him, was I now a source of shame? I walked slowly to a seat near the edge of the room, trying to steady myself. I kept my head down as waiters moved past with trays of food. Around me, guests laughed, told stories, and clapped each other on the back. They spoke about business deals and vacations, about new houses and expensive gifts. No one looked my way. I was invisible, just as Sophia wanted. From my corner, I watched Michael move through the crowd. He was handsome in his suit, confident, and full of life. Everyone admired him, and I couldn't deny the pride swelling in my chest. But every time I saw Sophia's hand slip into his arm, I remembered her words, and the pride turned to pain. My son was celebrated in this room, but I was asked to hide who I was. As the evening went on, I overheard little pieces of conversation. A woman at the table behind me said, "Sophia has such a supportive family. No wonder Michael is doing so well." Another man replied, "Yes, her parents must be proud." I sat silently, my hands folded in my lap, while strangers gave credit to a family that was not his. I wanted to speak up, to say, "No, I am his mother. I raised him when no one else was there. I gave everything so he could stand here today," but the memory of Sophia's words held me back. I reached into my bag and touched the frame I had wrapped for him. The photo inside showed Michael as a little boy on his father's shoulders, both of them laughing. It was a piece of his past, a reminder of love and sacrifice, but now it felt out of place among the glitter and glamour of this hall. I wondered if I should even give it to him. Maybe he would feel embarrassed, just as Sophia said. Maybe he would see me the same way she did. At one point, Michael passed by my table. Our eyes met for a moment, and he gave me a quick smile before someone else pulled him away. That small smile was enough to keep me from falling apart completely, but it wasn't enough to erase the loneliness I felt sitting in that room. As the evening drew closer to the speeches, I sank deeper into my chair. I told myself I would leave quietly after the toasts were done. No one would notice. No one would miss me. But in my heart, a storm was raging. I wanted to be proud, to stand tall as his mother, but I had been asked to stay silent. The pain of that request grew heavier with each passing minute. I thought of all the nights I had gone without sleep to make sure Michael had what he needed. I thought of the times I worked double shifts just so he could attend the school he deserved. I thought of how I had stood cheering in the crowd at every milestone, never caring if anyone knew my name, only caring that he succeeded. And now, the one place where my presence should have mattered most was the place where I was asked to pretend I didn't exist. I sat there, clutching the strap of my bag, trying to hold back tears. The noise of the room faded in my ears as I sank into my thoughts. I wondered if this was how the rest of my life would be, invited to the edges of his world, but never allowed to step fully inside. Little did I know that while I prepared myself to stay silent, Michael was about to say something that would change everything. As I sat at the edge of the crowded room, watching people laugh and toast to my son, I felt like a stranger in a life I had once built for him. My chest was heavy, but my face stayed calm. I reminded myself over and over that this was his night, not mine. I told myself that if I stayed quiet, if I kept my dignity, at least I would not ruin his happiness. But deep down, I could not escape the echo of Sophia's words. Embarrassing. That word rang in my ears like a cruel bell. The servers moved around me with trays of food, placing plates of roasted chicken and pasta in front of the guests. The table where I sat was half full, but no one spoke to me. They exchanged business stories, complimented each other's outfits, and planned vacations. I nodded politely when someone asked me to pass the bread basket, but that was the only time I was noticed. I wasn't just quiet, I was invisible. I opened my small purse and pulled out the wrapped frame I had brought for Michael. I set it on my lap and ran my hand over the paper. Inside was the picture of Michael and his father, captured on one of the happiest days of our lives. I had chosen it because I wanted Michael to remember his roots, to feel his father's presence as he celebrated this new stage of life. But now I wondered if I should even give it to him. What if Sophia saw it as old, sentimental, and out of place? What if Michael felt uncomfortable in front of his polished colleagues? I didn't want to risk embarrassing him the way his wife feared I would. I stared at the gift for a long time before slipping it back into my bag. I told myself I would give it to him privately. Maybe later, maybe not at all. For now, my plan was simple. Stay silent, clap when expected, and leave quietly once the night was over. Still, I couldn't stop the storm inside me. My mind drifted to memories of Michael as a little boy. I remembered the nights when I tucked him into bed, his small hands clutching mine as he asked if I would still be there in the morning. I remembered working late shifts, coming home exhausted, but still waking early to make his breakfast. I I remembered sewing patches into his jeans, cheering at his school plays, and holding him when he cried after losing his father. I had built every part of his world with my own hands, and now I was asked to hide the fact that I was even his mother. At one point during the evening, I excused myself and went to the restroom. I stood at the sink, looking at my reflection under the harsh, fluorescent light. My face showed every year of sacrifice, every sleepless night, every worry I had carried for my son. But my eyes also showed something else. Strength. I whispered to myself, "You are his mother. That will never change, no matter what anyone says." When I returned to the hall, the atmosphere had shifted. The cake had been rolled in, tall and decorated with candles. Guests gathered around as Michael prepared to give his speech. My heart pounded. I wanted so badly to stand close, to be part of the circle, but I stayed in my corner seat, as Sophia had asked. As I watched him walk toward the microphone, my decision settled inside me. I would not cause a scene. I would not fight for recognition. I would let him have his night without the shadow of conflict. I had lived my whole life putting Michael first, and this would be no different. I told myself that if he wanted to keep me in the background, I would accept that. My love for him did not need an audience. I folded my hands on the table, straightened my back, and prepared to clap with the rest of the room when his speech ended. Then I would leave quietly, unnoticed, just as Sophia wanted. But as Michael reached the microphone, something about the look on his face caught my attention. He smiled at the crowd, but his eyes searched the room until they found me. For a moment, everything else faded. His gaze held mine, steady and full of something I couldn't quite name. Pride? Love? Defiance? Whatever it was, it made my breath catch. In that instant, I felt the faintest flicker of hope. Maybe he hadn't forgotten. Maybe, just maybe, my years of sacrifice had not been erased. And as the room grew silent, waiting for his words, I braced myself for whatever was coming next, not knowing that it would shake everyone in the hall, including Sophia, to their core. The room grew quiet as Michael stepped up to the microphone. The lights above the stage cast a warm glow across his face, and all eyes turned to him. He smiled, the kind of confident smile that people expected from a man who had built a strong career and earned the respect of everyone in the room. Glasses clinked softly as the last conversations hushed, and for a moment, I felt proud just to see him standing there. He began by thanking the guests for coming, his voice steady and warm. "I'm so grateful to have all of you here tonight," he said. "Friends, colleagues, family, each of you means something to me." I felt Sophia's eyes scan the crowd, and I kept my gaze low, reminding myself of the promise I had silently made. I would not disrupt this night. Then Michael paused. He looked down at the notes in front of him, then folded the paper and set it aside. His expression shifted. He lifted his head, and his eyes searched the room until they landed on me, tucked away in the corner. My heart skipped a beat as he held my gaze, refusing to look away. "Before I say anything else," he said slowly, "I want to acknowledge the most important person in this room." I froze. A wave of whispers swept across the crowd. People leaned toward one another, wondering who he meant. Sophia stiffened beside the stage, her smile faltering. Michael's voice grew stronger. "The person I owe everything to is my mother, Evelyn Parker." A gasp rippled through the hall. Heads turned toward me. I felt my face flush as dozens of eyes settled on the quiet woman sitting alone at the edge of the room. For a moment, I wanted to sink into my chair, to disappear, but Michael kept going, his voice filled with emotion that silenced every doubt. "My mother raised me on her own after my father passed away," he said. "She worked nights and weekends, doing whatever it took to give me a future. She sacrificed everything so I could stand here today. Every success I've had, every step I've taken, has been because she believed in me. If you respect me, if you think highly of me, then you should know it is because of her." The room erupted in applause. It was loud, genuine, and overwhelming. People who had ignored me all night now turned to look at me with admiration. Some even rose to their feet, clapping harder. I sat frozen, tears stinging my eyes, my hands trembling in my lap. Sophia's face drained of color. She glanced nervously at the guests, her forced smile unable to hide her shock. She had asked me to hide, to pretend I wasn't his mother, but Michael had done the opposite. He had lifted me higher than I ever expected. Michael continued, his voice breaking slightly. I would not be the man I am without her. Tonight, I want to thank her in front of everyone. Mom, please stand up. For a moment I couldn't move. My legs felt weak, my chest tight with emotion. The guests turned toward me, clapping, cheering, some even calling my name. Slowly, I rose to my feet, wiping the tears from my cheeks. Michael smiled at me from the stage, and in that smile, I saw not just my grown son, but the little boy I had once carried in my arms. He lifted his glass. To my mother, the strongest, most loving person I know. Everyone followed his lead, raising their glasses high. The sound of voices echoed through the hall as they repeated, "To Evelyn." I stood, trembling, overwhelmed, my heart bursting with pride and love. Sophia clapped too, but her hands shook, her smile tight. She had wanted me hidden, but there was no hiding now. Michael's words had brought me into the center of the celebration, not as an afterthought, not as an embarrassment, but as the very reason for his success. When the applause finally settled, Michael stepped down from the stage and walked straight toward me. He didn't care about the crowd pressing in around him. He came to me, wrapped his arms around me, and held me tightly. "You will never be hidden, Mom," he whispered in my ear. "I am proud of you." I held him close, tears streaming freely now, unable to speak. The years of sacrifice, the loneliness, the silent struggles, they were all worth it for this moment. For the world to see what I had always known, that a mother's love and strength are the foundation of everything. The music started again, and the party carried on, but the atmosphere had changed. Guests came over to shake my hand, to thank me, to tell me I was an inspiration. Some even said, "Now we understand where Michael gets his strength." For the first time that night, I felt like I belonged in the room, not because Sophia had allowed it, but because my son had made sure of it. When the applause finally quieted and the music returned, I sank back into my chair, still trembling. My cheeks were wet with tears, but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. For so long, I had feared that my place in Michael's life had been shrinking, that I was nothing more than a shadow in his world. But in that moment, with the whole room cheering for me, I realized I had never been forgotten. My son had carried me in his heart all along, even if others had tried to push me aside. Guests began approaching me one after another. Some shook my hand firmly, others gave me warm smiles, and a few even hugged me. One man, an older colleague of Michael's, leaned close and said, "You should be proud, Mrs. Parker. Raising a man like him is no small thing. It takes strength, and he clearly got it from you." My throat tightened with emotion as I nodded, whispering, "Thank you." For the first time that night, I felt seen. Michael stayed near me for much of the evening after his speech. He introduced me proudly to his colleagues, telling them stories about how I worked 2 jobs so he could finish school, how I never missed a single one of his milestones. Each word he spoke washed over me like a healing balm. The silence I had endured earlier in the night was replaced with recognition I had never expected. Sophia, on the other hand, stood off to the side, her face pale as she tried to hold her composure. I could feel the weight of her shame in the way she avoided my eyes. She had wanted to keep me hidden, but instead, she was the one exposed. Guests no longer whispered about her beauty or her charm. They whispered about her mistake. Still, I chose not to bask in her discomfort. My heart wasn't built for revenge. It was built for love, and love had already won. Later in the evening, when the crowd had thinned, Sophia finally approached me. Her voice was low, her eyes glassy. "Evelyn," she began, struggling to meet my gaze, "I owe you an apology." She hesitated, then continued. "I let my pride and my obsession with appearances blind me. I thought that keeping things polished and perfect was what mattered most. But I see now how wrong I was. You aren't an embarrassment. You're the reason Michael is the man he is today." I looked at her carefully, searching her face. There was no arrogance now, no sharp edge in her tone. For the first time, She spoke with humility. I reached out and touched her hand lightly. Sophia, I said softly, being a mother isn't about being perfect. It's about giving, even when it hurts. I forgave you the moment you said those words, because I know you didn't understand. What matters now is that we build something better for the future. Her eyes filled with tears, and she nodded. I want that too, she whispered. That night ended differently than I had ever imagined. I didn't leave quietly through the back door, as I had planned. Instead, I left with my son's arm wrapped firmly around me, guiding me toward the car while guests waved us goodbye. He carried my gift with him, the photo frame I had debated giving, and promised me it would sit on his desk at work, a reminder of where he came from. When I got home, I sat by my little lamp and reflected on everything. I thought about how quickly life can shift from despair to hope, from rejection to acceptance. The night had begun with me being asked to hide, but it ended with me standing in the spotlight, celebrated for what I had once done in silence. The lesson I carried from that evening is one I want to share with anyone listening. Sometimes, the world may try to push you aside. People may tell you that you don't belong, that your sacrifices don't matter, that you should stay silent. But love and truth have a way of finding their voice, even when you don't speak. You don't always need to fight for recognition. Sometimes, it arrives when you least expect it, carried on the shoulders of those whose lives you shape. I also realized that dignity is its own strength. I could have argued with Sophia. I could have demanded my place. But instead, by staying calm, I allowed Michael's own heart to reveal the truth, and his words, spoken in front of the world, meant far more than anything I could have forced. Even now, when I think back to that night, I don't feel bitterness. I feel gratitude. Gratitude for the years that shaped Michael into the man he became. Gratitude for the moment he stood proudly by my side. And gratitude that even through pain, love prevailed. So to anyone who has ever felt invisible or unwanted, I say this: don't let the cruelty of others erase your worth. The sacrifices you make, the love you give, it matters more than you know. One day, in one way or another, the truth will shine through. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to my channel for more powerful life stories and comment below where you're watching from. I'd love to hear.